Our research topic focuses on data collection methods and systems utilized to track program progress and reporting details to grantors according to grant requisites. Data collection methods include direct sources, archival data and other artifacts, and indirect sources. Direct sources are data collection methods and systems utilized to track program progress to report details to grantors according to grant requisites. Direct sources are one way to collect data, whether from clients receiving services from the nonprofit or from those running the programs or services. There are three kinds of direct sources: observations, interviews, and questions and surveys. Observations. Observing the program's participants or how the program functions. A properly trained researcher or outside evaluator will conduct the observation, whether in an organized or informal setting. This should be done over time to ensure the observations are consistent. The pros. Organization gets an outsider's viewpoint. Trained researchers are less biased. The cons. Can be time-consuming, costly, and demanding. There's a chance that the observed days are not an accurate representation of the grant program's operations or participants. Once again, there are three kinds of direct sources. We just took a look at observations. Now, let's take a look at interviews. Interviews gather qualitative data and can be collected per client in person or over the phone. In an interview, questions are open-ended and responses are carefully recorded. Questions can include demographics, participation, satisfaction of programs, or overall thoughts on grant programs. The pros. Can deliver extensive amounts of detailed information, and the organization may learn about problems that need to be addressed. The cons. People may be too busy to do an interview, and participants may not feel comfortable with the interviewer, affecting answers. We have reviewed the observations and interview portion of direct resources. Now, let's take a look at questionnaires and surveys. In questionnaires and surveys, respondents answer from a list of prepared questions. They collect information that is similar to the interviewing method: demographics, opinions, satisfaction levels. The survey is usually in a yes-no format or on a scale such as from 1 to 5. They can be face-to-face, over the phone, through the mail, or by email. The pros. Fast and inexpensive. Good for getting information from a large amount of people quickly. The cons. Entering the data can be a long process, and not all surveys may get completed and turned in. On direct sources. While the information gathered is accurate, it can lead to response bias, where those providing their responses answer in a way that they believe the organization will want them to, or in a socially acceptable way. Once again, for data collection methods, there are direct sources, archival data, and indirect sources. For archival data and other artifacts, data archiving is the process of moving data that is no longer actively used to a separate storage device for long-term retention. Archived data consists of older data that is still important to the organization and may be needed for future reference, as well as data that must be retained for regulatory compliance. Sources of archival data include public records from governmental agencies, research organizations, health and human service organizations, schools and education departments, academic and similar institutions, and business and industry. We have reviewed direct sources and archival data. Now let's take a look at indirect sources. Indirect sources gather information from sources other than the effective clientele. Indirect sources come from family and friends close to the client receiving services, organizations that have conducted a similar study, typically utilized during grant proposal process. What database systems collect this information? Click here to find out.
Created using Powtoon.